This is the moment a high school bully's entire world ended. Not with a bang, but with a single, brutal kick. And if you think you know how this story ends, trust me, you have no idea. Stick with me, because the reason this video went viral isn't the violence. It's what happened in the 10 seconds that followed. A moment of justice so perfect, it will leave you breathless. If you love stories where the underdog fights back in ways you never see coming, you're in the right place. Subscribe and join us, because this is one story you'll be telling your friends about. Toot toot, the air in the Maple Creek High School auditorium was thick with a cheap, cloying perfume of anticipation, bleach, and teenage sweat. It was Friday, June 6, 2025, graduation day. A sea of royal blue caps and gowns rippled under the harsh glare of the stage lights, a monochrome army waiting for their freedom papers. The maroon velvet curtains, slightly frayed at the edges, stood like solemn witnesses. A massive banner strung proudly above the stage declared, CO Granulotls 2025, in bold, white letters. For most, this was the pinnacle of 13 years of work. For 19-year-old Maya Flores, it was a miracle. Maya sat in the third row, her posture so straight it seemed to defy the weight pressing down on her shoulders. Her long, wavy brown hair, usually left free, was tucked meticulously under her graduation cap. Beneath the bulky gown, she wore a simple thrift store dress, but her heart held a ticket to a future. No one in her family had ever touched a full-ride scholarship to Stanford. She was first-generation everything, first-generation American, first-generation to finish high school, first-generation college-bound. Her parents, beaming from the fifth row, with her little brother sandwiched between them, had cried the day the acceptance letter came. They had worked back, breaking jobs in landscaping and housekeeping to give her this shot. Today was for them as much as it was for her. And then there was Kyle. Kyle, the cannon, Jacobs, star quarterback, heir to his father's local car dealership empire, and the undisputed king of Maple Creek High's social jungle. He wore his Letterman jacket over his gown, the oversized blue and yellow B, a blatant symbol of his untouchable status. He was smirking, cracking jokes with his teammates, his arm slung casually around the shoulders of the head cheerleader. To Kyle, this ceremony was a coronation, a brief, boring interlude before a summer of parties and a fall at a state school where he'd been guaranteed a spot on the team, no questions asked. Maya and Kyle's worlds had collided just 3 months earlier, when Maya's family had finally settled in Maple Creek. After a series of moves chasing cheaper rent, she was the new girl, quiet, studious, and utterly invisible to the likes of Kyle. Until she wasn't. It happened in Mr. Davison's advanced calculus class. Kyle, who floated through school on a combination of charm, athletic prestige, and terrified teachers willing to nudge his grades, had been failing miserably. The final project, a complex problem set, was worth 50% of the grade. Without a passing grade, he'd be off the team and his scholarship offer would vanish. He'd sauntered over to Maya's desk the day it was assigned. "Hey, new girl. I need you to do this for me," he'd said, not a request, but a decree. Maya had looked up from her notebook, her dark eyes calm but unyielding. "No, Kyle. You need to do it yourself. It's not that hard if you pay attention." The air in the classroom had gone stale. No one talked to Kyle Jacobs like that. A slow, ugly red crept up his neck. "You think you're smart. You're nothing. A nobody. Do the project or you'll regret it." She'd simply shaken her head and gone back to her work. That small, quiet no was a declaration of war in Kyle's world. The retaliation was swift and brutal. It started small, whispers in the hall, "Snob, bitch, think you're better than us." Then it escalated. Her locker was vandalized with cruel slurs. Her textbooks went missing. A particularly vicious rumor that she had slept with a teacher for her grades spread through the school like a digital wildfire, fanned by Kyle and his followers. Maya endured it. She buried herself in her books, in the comforting certainty of equations and historical dates. She cried only at night into her pillow, where her parents couldn't hear. She was so close to the finish line. She just had to make it to graduation. But Kyle wasn't finished. Being ignored was an insult his ego couldn't stomach. The final provocation came yesterday in the cafeteria. He'd accidentally bumped into her, sending her tray of food clattering to the floor, a mess of spaghetti and milk soaking her only good sweater. The entire lunchroom had erupted in laughter. As she knelt, humiliated, trying to scoop the mess onto the tray, He'd leaned down and hissed, his voice a venomous whisper only she could hear. You ruined my life. Tomorrow, at graduation, everyone will finally see you for the trash you are. Though back in the auditorium, the ceremony droned on. The principal, a well-meaning but perpetually wary man named Mr. Henderson, gave a speech about reaching for the stars and the bonds that last a lifetime. Maya tuned it out, her fingers nervously tracing the embossed letters on her diploma cover. She just had to walk across the stage, shake his hand, and it would be over. Freedom. Kyle, meanwhile, was growing restless. The threat of his failed calculus grade was a reality now. The college coach had called his father last night. The offer was rescinded. His future, the one he believed was his birthright, had evaporated because of her. Because the new girl, the quiet, mousy scholarship case, hadn't known her place. The rage, simmering for months, was now a rolling boil inside him. He saw her a few rows ahead, sitting so prim and proper, and he saw everything he'd lost. The moment finally arrived. The band began to play Pomp and Circumstance. The graduates, a wave of blue, began to rise and form a wobbly line, preparing to process across the stage. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the vice principal announced into the microphone, her voice echoing cheerily. Graduates, please proceed to the stage as your name is called. The line shuffled forward. Parents leaned in, phones raised high, their screens a constellation of tiny lights in the dark auditorium. Maya's row stood. As they filed into the aisle, the line compressed. A bottleneck formed near the stage steps. In the chaotic shuffle of bodies and flowing gowns, Maya felt a sharp, deliberate shove from behind. She stumbled forward, her cap slipping sideways, and collided with the person in front of her, Kyle. He whirled around, his face a mask of feigned outrage. "Watch it, Flores!" "You trying to trip me?" he snarled, his voice loud enough to draw attention. A few nervous titters came from the surrounding graduates. Phones, which had been pointing generally at the stage, now swiveled toward the commotion. "I'm sorry, someone pushed me." Maya stammered, her face flushing with a heat of instant humiliation. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her. "Yeah, right?" Kyle spat, stepping closer, invading her space. The crowd around them fell silent, the festive atmosphere evaporating. "You've had it in for me since day one. You think you're so much better than everyone with your stupid scholarships." "Kyle, stop it. Just leave me alone," she said, her voice trembling but clear. It was the same quiet defiance she'd shown him in calculus class. That was the final straw. The public defiance. The sight of her, scared but still unbroken, shattered the last of his control. His friends were watching. The whole school was watching. "You want me to leave you alone?" he yelled, his voice echoing in the suddenly quiet auditorium. "I'll leave you alone." Time seemed to slow, to stretch and warp. Later, on the dozens of videos that would flood the internet, this moment would be analyzed frame by frame. Maya, seeing the unhinged fury in his eyes, took a half step back, her hands coming up in a futile, instinctive gesture of self-defense. Her mouth opened in a small, silent O of terror. And then Kyle moved. It wasn't a punch. It was something far more brutal, far more demeaning. Drawing his leg back like the athlete he was, he aimed a vicious, full-force kick directly at her face. The connection was sickening. A sharp, wet crack that was unmistakably the sound of bone and flesh meeting violence. A collective, horrified gasp sucked all the air out of the room. Maya's head snapped back. A spray of crimson blood arced through the spotlight's glare. Her scream was cut short as she crumpled to the polished wooden stage floor, a broken doll in a blue gown. Her cap flew off, her long brown hair spilling out like a dark halo around her head. She clutched her face, blood already seeping through her fingers, her body racked with sobs. The sound of her crying was the only thing that pierced the stunned silence. Kyle stood over her, his chest heaving, a grotesque look of triumph on his face. He had done it. He had finally put her in her place. He opened his mouth, perhaps to spit one last insult, to cement his victory. He never got the chance. From the side of the stage, a gray-suited blur shot forward. Principal Henderson had been standing near the podium, his smile frozen in horror as the scene unfolded. For a split second, he was paralyzed, a bureaucrat faced with a primal act of violence. But then he saw Maya on the ground bleeding. He saw the entitled triumphant sneer on Kyle's face. And something in the tired, wary principal snapped. He didn't shout. He didn't yell, "Stop!" He simply lunged. He moved with a speed no one knew he possessed, crossing the stage in 3 long, powerful strides. As Kyle stood there, his brain still catching up to the fact that he had just committed a felony in front of 1,000 witnesses, Mr. Henderson was already upon him. The principal didn't tackle him. He didn't throw a punch. What he did was far more cinematic, far more symbolically powerful. He threw his entire body between the bully and his victim. Planting his feet, Principal Henderson wrapped both of his arms around Kyle in a bear hug from the side, pinning the quarterback's arms to his torso. It was an act of pure, unyielding restraint, a wall of authority crashing down on unbridled aggression. And in that instant, Kyle froze. The triumphant sneer melted from his face, replaced by a blank, slack-jawed stare of utter shock. His eyes, wide and uncomprehending, were fixed on the principal's enraged face, just inches from his own. The reality of what he had done, the public spectacle, the certain consequences, it all crashed down on him at once. The cannon was disarmed. The king was dethroned. In the glare of 1,000 phone lights, he was just a boy who had kicked a girl in the face, caught in the act by the one person who could bring his world crashing down. The image was instantly iconic. The bully, mid-snarl, frozen in a state of shock. The principal, his face a thundercloud of righteous fury, holding him fast, and on the floor between them, the bleeding, sobbing victim. It was a perfect triptych of good, evil, and consequence. The silence in the auditorium broke. A woman shrieked. Dozens of parents surged to their feet. Chairs screeched against the floor. A cacophony of shouts and cries filled the air. On stage, a teacher rushed to Maya, kneeling beside her, trying to stem the flow of blood with a graduation program. The vice principal was frantically calling for security, her voice cracking over the PA system. Kyle was wrestled away by 2 burly football coaches who had sprinted from the audience, their faces grim. The look of shock never left his eyes as he was hauled, stumbling, toward the backstage area. The spell was broken, and in its wake was chaos, horror, and the piercing sound of Maya's pain. The aftermath was a whirlwind. An ambulance, its siren a jarring counterpoint to what was supposed to be a day of celebration, tore Maya away to the hospital. The diagnosis: a broken nose, a fractured orbital bone, a severe concussion, and dental damage that would require multiple surgeries. The physical wounds would heal, but the psychological ones ran deep. The videos, of course, went viral. Not just locally, not just statewide, but globally. Her graduation kick trended for days. The frozen frame of Kyle's stunned face became the ultimate instant karma meme. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as a tale of bullying, entitlement, and shocking public violence. But the story wasn't over. This was where the real drama began. In the principal's office, with a police officer present, Kyle was belligerent. "It was an accident! She tripped me! She's been obsessed with me for months!" His parents, red-faced and furious, threatened to sue the school for manhandling. Their son, they were a fortress of wealth and denial. But they had underestimated 2 things: the sheer, undeniable power of 1,000 cell phone videos, and the quiet, simmering rage of a community that had finally had enough. Principal Henderson, no longer wary but filled with a cold, clear purpose, did not suspend Kyle. He expelled him. On the spot. He worked with the police to ensure Kyle was charged as an adult with aggravated assault. The star quarterback spent his graduation night in a jail cell. That should have been the end. Justice served, but Maya's story was one of quiet strength, and her empowerment was just beginning. Lying in her hospital bed, her face swollen and bandaged, she made a decision. She was done being a victim. With the help of a pro bono lawyer who had seen the news, she filed a civil lawsuit against Kyle and his family for damages. But more importantly, she decided to speak. 1 week after the attack, she posted a video online. Sitting in her bedroom, her face still bearing the yellow and purple shadows of her bruises, she spoke quietly but firmly to the camera. "My name is Maya Flores," she began. "I was the girl kicked in the face at graduation. But I am not just that. I am a daughter. I am a sister. I am a student who worked for every grade I ever got. I am going to Stanford in the fall to study biomedical engineering, and no one, not even Kyle Jacobs, is going to stop me." She didn't scream or cry. She simply told her truth. She spoke of the months of bullying, the constant fear, the school administration's previous reluctance to confront a star athlete. She spoke of the moment on that stage, the terror, the pain. And then she said the words that would ignite a fire. "This isn't just about me. This is about every kid who gets pushed around because they're different, because they're smart, because they're quiet. This is for every person who has ever been made to feel small. We are not small. Our dreams are bigger than their hate. The video exploded. A GoFundMe set up by her parents to cover her medical expenses the Jacobs family refused to acknowledge, was flooded with donations, soaring past its goal in hours. It wasn't just about the money, it was a tidal wave of public support. News shows interviewed her, hailing her as a symbol of resilience. The final, dramatic twist came from an unexpected source. A week after Maya's video, a former teammate of Kyle's, a young man named Jake, who had been on the receiving end of Kyle's cruelty for years, came forward. He went to Principal Henderson and the police with a secret he'd been carrying. On the day of graduation, Kyle had bragged to his friends in the locker room that he was going to make the new girl famous. He had planned it. The shove, the provocation. It was all a setup. It was premeditated. This new evidence transformed the case. The charges against Kyle were upgraded. The public sympathy for him, which had existed in a few dark corners of the internet, evaporated completely. His family's business was hit with a massive boycott. Their fortress of wealth and influence crumbled under the weight of truth and public outrage. The fall of Kyle Jacobs was absolute and merciless. 2 months later, on a bright August morning, Maya Flores stood on the doorstep of her new dorm at Stanford. The bruises had faded, though a small, faint scar remained near her eyebrow, a badge of survival, not shame. She had used a portion of the GoFundMe money to pay for her family's move to California, a fresh start for all of them. As she unpacked her boxes, her phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Kyle Jacobs had accepted a plea deal. He would be spending the next 18 months in a state penitentiary, followed by 3 years of probation. He would be a registered violent offender for the rest of his life. His football career was ash. His future, the one he tried to steal from Maya, was now his own personal ruin. Maya read the article, her face calm. There was no joy in his downfall, only a quiet, profound sense of closure. The scales of justice, though slow and imperfect, had finally balanced. She looked out her window at the sun-drenched Stanford campus, at the students laughing and walking toward their futures. She thought of her parents, finally able to sleep through the night without worry. She thought of the thousands of messages she'd received from other kids who had been bullied, thanking her for her courage. She had walked through fire, and she had emerged not burned but tempered, stronger. She had lost a graduation, but she had found her voice. And as she turned from the window to finish unpacking, ready to claim the brilliant future she had earned with every ounce of her being, she knew, with absolute certainty, that her story was only just beginning. This story, from the shocking public violence to the principal's heroic intervention to Maya's incredible empowerment, shows how one moment can change everything. It's a reminder that even in our darkest times, there is light, and that courage can be found in the quietest of hearts. This story resonated with people from all walks of life, from every corner of the country. It makes me wonder, our community here is so widespread. From which part of the country are you watching this video? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Thank you for watching.